dos olhos meus e a luz dos olhos teus resolvem se encontrar. Ai, que bom que isso é, meu Deus, que frio que me dá o encontro desse olhar. Mas se a luz dos olhos teus resiste aos olhos meus só pra me provocar, meu amor, juro por Deus, me sinto incendiar. Meu amor, juro por Deus que a luz dos olhos meus já não pode esperar. Quero a luz dos olhos meus na luz dos olhos teus sem mais lararará. Pela luz dos olhos teus eu acho meu amor e só se pode achar que a luz dos olhos meus precisa se casar.
The Invisible, Part 3. John was about to tell Ms. White that both were in Giorgio's room when Julia signals him to be silent. Julia then promised Ms. White that she was going to let her know as soon as she found Elisa, or Lena, and her mother, and asked her to do the same, to which Ms. White immediately agreed. Ms. White then walked away to her husband while John and Julia moved to the bar. "Why didn't you tell her?" John asked. "Because she would be crazy worried, and I won't tell anyone until I make sure that Elisa is okay." Julia was trying to feel confident and take the responsibility to solve that mystery to save other people from being worried. She had been used to solving everything by herself and didn't ask for help, since she was very young, but this time she had no idea what to do next. So, they just stay in the bar in silence, having their drink while trying to call Elisa. No answer. Julia then got his hand and in silence pulled him back to the hall, going straight to that niche in the wall and said, "I think here was the last place anyone saw Elisa." So, they looked for signs, clues, anything that could help. They touched the walls, the painting, tried to open the window, that was stuck, and finally went downstairs to the parking lot where they could see the window from the outside. There was nothing at all, no ideas left, and it was time for the wedding. Everyone was in their positions and John went to the garden to look for his friends, while Julia was taking her place with the bridesmaids. Everyone seemed relaxed and happy, and no one apparently was noticing or mentioning any issues. The ceremony started as planned, and beside him, Ms. White and Julia, there were no concerns about Elisa at all. John regretted not telling Giorgio that could have something off, but he didn't want to create chaos unless it was necessary. Everyone was in their positions, and Giorgio seemed to be very happy and emotional. Julia was the only one not smiling up there. So, the bridal march started playing, and to John's surprise, there was a very happy bride with her father was coming in. He immediately looked at Julia and watched her tension relieve immediately, and her smile coming back as lighting a bright lamp. Elisa looked beautiful, with a ball gown and a long veil, looking like a royalty member. Giorgio cried almost the whole ceremony while she was supporting him with a sweet smile and wet eyes. And when they did their votes, Giorgio sang a Spanish song to her named Mi Corazón no Olvida, that apparently was meaningful to her, because her tears finally dropped between a smile of genuine happiness. At least that was the impression John had from where he was. The wedding party was amazing. Giorgio and Elisa were taking pictures and receiving compliments. They couldn't give much attention to anyone in particular, because they were trying to thank in person all the people for being there. John had dinner with his friends, and as soon as people started dancing, he looked for Julia on the dance floor. Julia was enjoying the party with the other bridesmaids when he found her. They laughed at themselves for playing the Scooby-Doo mystery folks for almost 2 hours in a row looking for Elisa. Julia told him that the first thing she did when briefly spoke to Elisa at the end of the ceremony was to promise her to tell the whole story about their saga to find the non-missing bride. After a couple of drinks, Julia pulled John to a remote corner of the garden, a little bit far from the party, and asked him to wait there, sitting by the fountain. Julia went back from her room with her guitar and offered to play for her. And she was going to sing for him. They shared a few songs, and while the night was getting quieter, they started talking about themselves and their lives. John told Julia about his poor childhood, how his father Larry didn't make that much money, so his mom Gina was always taking care of other kids to make an extra to help with the bills. The kids were usually younger than him, what made him very responsible and independent as a kid, and very extroverted since he had different friends to play with while he grew up. So, his memories were very happy, full of the joy that a simple life can provide. Julia told John about her life with her mom as a child. Kelly, Julia's mom, had 2 jobs to support their family and to incentive her dream of being a pop star by paying for her singing, guitar, and dance classes. She wanted her daughter Julia to be happy more than anything else in the world. Kelly married Julia's stepfather, Howie, when she was 13, what changed her life since her mom didn't need a second job anymore and could spend more time with her. Howie was a good guy that always treated their family with respect, and when Julia was in college and her mother had breast cancer, he took care of Kelly and loved her until the end. That made Julia get close to him, and from that moment on, she decided to call him Dad and take care of Howie when he gets old, like a good daughter does. Julia still visits him frequently, and every Thanksgiving Howie prepares her favorite dessert, dark forest cake, since her 13th until nowadays. John asked about her biological father, and Julia told him that she had never found out anything about him. Kelly refused to talk about it, and in the end, he wasn't needed at all. Howie is the father she chose, and that's better than anyone could ask for. John told her about the dream of being a musician and how he made his career choices according to the needs of his family, instead of following his heart to music. John told her how he admires Julia's courage to pursue her dreams, and even not regretting his choices, he deep down wishes that one day he can live a dream too. Because of so many things in common, as a type of joke, John started playing and singing I Got You Babe and hoping she would follow and sing as a duet. So, while she was singing her part of the song, John kissed her. They spent the next hours talking between kisses and playing their favorite songs to each other. At that point, they didn't even remember the wedding party anymore, and only when almost everyone was gone, they noticed the silence and decided it was time. John walked Julia to her door, and finally asked for her phone number before he could forget again. He kissed her goodnight and promised to come back tomorrow. John started walking back to his room humming and thinking about the amazing night he had had when he listened to the old clock in the hall to bell the midnight tone. Just to check, he went to the bar looking for Ricky, and just stuck in the middle of the hall shocked. In the corner of the bar, he could see Giorgio, holding a curvy brunette by her waist and kissing her neck between sips of his Manhattan. That was, by far, the weirdest scenario he could have ever imagined for the end of his night. John turned his back and went to his room as far as he could, before Giorgio could notice him there. Next morning, John woke up and checked his phone. It was still time for breakfast. He was supposed to get on his flight around 6 p.m., which for a Sunday means lots of people and long lines, so the plan was to spend as much time with Julia as he could before it was time to go. John texted her good morning and invited Julia to join him in the restaurant. She immediately replied, "See you in 10. While he was taking the fastest shower of his life, he decided to tell Julia what he witnessed. The day before, she trusted him to share her suspicions about Elisa, so it was fair that he retributed the honesty. He spent some time thinking about it before he could sleep, and from all his options, he believed that was the best way to go. John wanted to help Giorgio, but he was clearly wrong, and John didn't want to be an accomplice. Also, if Julia ever found out he knew something like that and ignored it, maybe John would lose her trust. That thought was how John found out that he wanted to see Julia again after the end of their trip, and he was going to do everything possible to make that happen. John wanted to make sure everyone was going to solve things peacefully, so he wanted to join forces with Julia and do the best they could for their friends. Julia was already there sitting with just a cup of hot latte, waiting for him to arrive to get some food together. John smiled at her and kissed her briefly before sitting. Julia then pulled him to a longer and more intense kiss that made him forget everything for a minute. I really like you, so I hope what I have to tell doesn't ruin this moment," John said. Julia looked at him curiously but also concerned. "Is there anything wrong, John? I hope you didn't suddenly forget about a wife and kids." John laughed and kissed her again, saying, "No, babe, we are just fine," realizing how things flow easy and natural with her. "It is about something that I saw last night after I left you in your room," he said, and then described what happened. He thought she would want to go directly to talk to Elisa, but Julia said, "It's Giorgio's responsibility to tell her, and I will be there to support Elisa if she needs me." Perfect, he thought, then let's enjoy our breakfast, and let's make it long enough for me to steal some kisses and berries that I said I didn't want from your plate. Julia was also leaving that day. She was going to drive to her hometown, so she offered him a ride to the airport later. John accepted and asked if she would like his visit on Labor Day, for them to spend more time together. It was midsummer, so there were a couple weeks to the holiday. "It's going to be a weird long-distance thing for a while," John said, "but as long as we are on the same page, I am in." Julia kissed him and said, "You can visit me anytime, and I would love to spend the holiday getting to know you better. Hope you don't mind cat fur." They went straight to Giorgio and Elisa's room after breakfast. John knocked and Giorgio opened the door with a huge smile. John noticed that the bathroom door was closed and the shower on. Elisa was going to give him a little bit of time speaking with John alone, what was very convenient. "John, glad to see you, man. Yesterday I was hanging out with Cass, and we couldn't find you to join us. But I see you had a good reason to disappear," Giorgio said, smiling and blinking at Julia. Julia remained serious. "Giorgio, I appreciate the sympathy, but we need to speak with you, and then with Elisa." At that moment, the bathroom door opened, and they heard a voice saying, "Who is Elisa?" And watched surprised when a beautiful woman came out of the bathroom, brushing her wet hair. It was the same one from last night, John noticed.
Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website to read more tales. www.foresttales.com